And tell me a bit about the importance of experiential learning when it comes to science.
I think in my opinion, there's no better learning experience than experimental learning or having a very hands-on learning environment. So by having different tools and environments and resources where students can pick up that information and the concepts that may be difficult for them to grasp just kinesthetically or auditory or visually, having that hands-on experience or experimental learning is really big for them in terms of grasping those concepts that may be foreign to them in other methods.
Can you give me any examples of how you've used math in the outdoors?
Oh, of course. Like in my previous schools, we've used gardens such as this one, where we've actually went out and planted like 1/3 of a bed of celery and 2/5 of a bed of carrots, and use those particular real world experiences for students to have a real hands-on understanding of what fractions are, even decimals when we're measuring like water and rainfall and conversion methods. Like a lot of those particular things they flirt the line of math and science. So we've used a lot of those resources and tools to help students kind of grasp those concepts.
Can you tell me more about cross-curricular learning in the outdoors?
Cross-curricular learning in outdoors it's important, it's big. I think that a lot more teachers and educators, even administrators and school communities should adopt those methods, because it blends the curriculums together, it blends the topics and concepts together so that students don't necessarily know that they're learning, whether they're learning math or science, because it goes hand in hand. If you're talking about rainfall or you're talking about planting, there's science in that, but there's also mathematics in that. There's also literary elements in that. So I think that by blending those together, students are able to, like I said, grasp those concepts much more effectively than just a traditional learning environment.
Can you tell me, and I don't know if you've had this experience or not, can you tell me a story about a student who's had a particularly strong learning experience with experiential learning outdoors?
Yes, so my 5th graders take a trip to Camp Fraser, which is in the Potomac watershed, where they learn about water conservation practices. They also learn about the environment and how the watershed kind of feeds into the Potomac and the importance of protecting the Potomac watershed. So I take a bunch of students, and some students, it's an overnight trip. It's like 3 or 4 days. It's all expenses paid. They stay in log cabins, and the kids love it because we go out actually onto the watershed, and a lot of students came back this year in particular with new ways of conserving water. So like at recess they play football, and then if a kid's hogging the water fountain, it's like, hey, you only need to do this much. Or if a kid spits some water out, they're like, no, don't do that. Like we need to conserve water. So some students really take some of those things that they've learned from experimental learning and basically use them on an everyday basis. It becomes more instilled in them. So I think that that's an example or kind of an experience where students have come back and said, I kind of really ingested that content and I understand what I'm talking about. So they can explain to you everything under the sun in terms of water conservation and protecting the Potomac watershed.
How do you think meaningful, contextual, real-world experiential learning can help keep more students in the STEM career pipeline?
It goes back to that thought process of when you do something, it means more to you. If you build it, you take more pride in it. If you are the person who is fostering that idea from inception all the way out to fruition, like you really take a sense of pride in what you're building and what you're learning. So I think that experiential learning is big because, for example, if the students are out here in the garden and they're out here, whether it's reading on the stumps and doing popcorn reading, whether it's planting, whether it's watering, whether it's just coming up on a Saturday, that right there makes the meaningful difference between them saying, hey, I understand what I'm doing and I want to take care of this and I want to stay in this field. So I think that gives them a good exposure and introduction to the STEM and science related fields.
Thank you so much.
No problem.